Hello, it's March 3rd, 2024 again. I'm going to continue reading. We're reading Travels with Nobody. That's my book here, illustrated and written by me. And so this chapter 4, starting on page 53, Thanksgiving. Right. Okay, all right. Another day at the pond in Japan, age 57. Perhaps just a week to go before the cherry trees bloom. Yellow mustard flowers glow bright in the dappled light beneath the leafless trees. The neighborhood committee has strung red and white paper lanterns through the branches. When the blossoms come, the walkway will be illuminated beautifully in the soft light of the lanterns. People will have picnics with all manner of food and liquor. They will drink deep into the night, but that will begin 1 week from now. The peak of the bloom will be 2 weeks from now. But today the weather is perfect for a picnic, so I have brought my colored pencils, paper, and acrylic paints. I have some 20 different colored pencils, but I only bring 5 tubes of acrylics, the primary colors, and black and white. And I have a thermos full of coffee. So there I was. So where was I? Yes, Thanksgiving at the truck stop in Kansas, when I was just 20. The storm had gathered strength in the half hour before I saw a sign for a truck stop. The sky was dark. The rain had turned to snow. The wind whipped the snow across the road. My car had regular tires, not snow tires. I had thought about that before I'd left New Hampshire, but I had figured that the chances were good that I could get out to California before winter really set in. This was an early storm. Most of the traffic was long-haul trucks traveling in convoys. They barreled past my car one after another. My car could only go about 60, maybe 65 on the flats. With a headwind, just a second here. Okay. With the headwind that day, I must have been going under 60. The trucks must have been going over 80 miles per hour. So far, the road surface had not frozen. I remember the relief I felt when I saw the sign for that truck stop. They did have rooms available. I got one. In the time it took me to check in and shower, it had become night outside. The snow had become a blizzard, blowing horizontally across the lot, illuminated copper orange by the sodium lights. I walked through that whipping gale to the restaurant. The sign said that they had an all-you-can-eat turkey dinner buffet with all the fixins for $8.99. They had put the word fixins in quotation marks. It reminded me of seeing a sign in New Hampshire for pick your own strawberries. Uh, Chuck and I had joked that we wondered what kind of berries they actually were. We went in. I was led to a booth with a view of the highway and the sodium illuminated blizzard. The waitress came to the table and wished me a happy Thanksgiving. She listed the specials and explained about the turkey dinner buffet. I ordered the buffet with coffee. There were several other customers, but the restaurant was not busy. I supposed that the other customers were truck drivers. They were all men, most eating alone. The waitress brought my coffee. "You spending Thanksgiving here all by your lonesome?" she asked. She appeared to be in her 50s, bleach blonde hair, thick makeup, red lipstick that extended beyond the edges of her lips, turquoise-rimmed kitty cat glasses. I told her that I was driving to San Francisco, that I had come from New Hampshire. "New Hampshire? That's one beautiful place, I tell ya. I've been there long time ago. A place called Laconia. You know Laconia, hon?" she said. "Yes, up on Lake Winnipesaukee," I said. "That's it," she said. "Lake Winnipesaukee something or other. I remember that," she said. Was it June? I asked. I don't rightly recall exactly, she said, her brow furrowed in effort to scour her memory. Were you there for motorcycle weekend? I asked. Yes, as a matter of fact, we were. I was with this fella back then. Big biker. Hell of a nice guy, she said. Yeah, that's a big thing every year, I said. She looked out the window to the snowy night. This one's a doozy, they say. Early for snow, she said. I agreed. Well, I'm gonna make my rounds with the coffee. You holler when you need something, she said. Thanks, I said. The restaurant had a real roast turkey with stuffing, not canned turkey. It was a nice spread, I thought, and not too expensive. They had cranberry sauce. That was the canned stuff, but I wasn't complaining. They had mashed potatoes, gravy, several casseroles, even creamed onions. They had pumpkin pie and apple pie and custard pie. Food-wise, I wasn't missing out on Thanksgiving. But it did feel strange to be alone. The radio was tuned to a country music station that had weather updates between songs. Then it played commercials for local businesses. I ate, looked out at the trucks blasting by on the highway, the cones of light from their headlights. The song Coat of Many Colors by Dolly Parton came on. I had never been a country music fan before, but I had seen Dolly Parton sing at the Kentucky State Fair in Louisville back when I must have been 10 or 12 years old, when we had been visiting Grandma and Grandpa Stroh. She had sung this song. This time I listened and ate. The images in the song of the mother stitching together bits of cloth to make a coat, and with each piece of cloth she told more and more of the biblical story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. My mother had sewed clothes of all sorts for our family, down parkas from frost-lined kits. She had knitted sweaters, hats, and mittens by the dozen. She even made me a tent. A tent! And it's no slouch of a tent. It's a really good one. As I sit here at the pond in Japan thinking en plein air, I realized that I still have that tent. It's 40 years old, and I still have it and use it. But back at the truck stop in Kansas, sitting out the great Thanksgiving Day blizzard, I listened to the song and looked at my food. I suddenly realized that I was about to cry. I wasn't going to be able to stop it. I got up to go to the bathroom. I went to a toilet stall and sat down. It was a wave not unlike the feeling that had come over me in the times when I had drank too much and suddenly realized that I was going to puke. I wasn't going to puke, but then the tears came. I grabbed toilet paper to mop up the tears and muffle any sound. The tears came with waves of feeling like shivering, but I wasn't cold. It was as if my body was wringing out some terrible spirit that I had stuffed down over a long time. I don't know if anybody else might have heard me at the time. I hope not. I realized that I had not cried when my mother had died. I hadn't cried at the funeral. My father sure had. Shortly after she died, my father had bought a very good stereo with big, expensive, loud speakers. He bought several pop records that I had not known he liked. One was by the Bay City Rollers. Dad likes the Bay City Rollers? I thought to myself. Another was the greatest hits of the Mamas and Papas. I had always liked the Mamas and the Papas, but I didn't have any of their records. Before my mother died, my father had only expressed contempt for the music that his kids liked. He had particularly hated the Rolling Stones. I remember one time when he and I were talking about music, and he agreed to at least listen to a song I liked. It was Sympathy for the Devil, the studio version. My sister had given us a copy of the live album, Get Your Ya-Ya's Out, which had a live version of that song that just swept me away. But for my father, I wanted him to pay attention to the lyrics, which even as a child, when I had first heard that song, I had appreciated as profound. Just as every cop is a criminal, and all the sinners saints, as heads is tails, just call me Lucifer, 'cause I'm in need of some restraint. I held my finger up to focus on this line. My father listened, making facial expressions of acknowledgement as the key points of the song went by. When the song was over, he told me that he understood why I, so young, would think that song was good. Would think that the song was good. But he said that when I got older and had a better trained ear, I would recognize that it isn't so profound. But he bought a Bay City Rollers album? Okay. But in the weeks after my mother died, he played one song over and over, blasting loud. Memories, sung by Barbra Streisand, which is actually the way we were, I think. Sometimes I would come home from working at the orchard and find the lights out, house dark, and from the driveway I could hear the song loud and clear, as could the neighbors, I'm sure. Then I listened carefully, and I could hear my father sobbing. This happened more than once. I would wait outside until the song ended. Then I'd go up the porch stairs and open the door. At the time, I thought he was losing it. But now, sitting at the pond in Japan, thinking back to that Thanksgiving at the truck stop in Kansas so long ago, I realized that what I had seen and heard was not the sights and sounds of a man losing it. It was the sights and sounds of a man grieving over the loss of his wife. That is what a sane person does when they lose somebody they love. I had not done that at all. I had not cried. I had tried to act as if there had been nothing wrong. I had tried to be thick-skinned. I even joked about it. I had thought that was what it meant to be strong. There in the bathroom at the truck stop, I finally let loose a flood of tears, wave after wave of shuddering sobbing, trying to hold back any sound. Then the tears ended. The shivering ended. I cleaned up my face, flushed the toilet, and went back to the table. It had not been such a long time. My food was still warm. I called for more coffee. I suppose nobody noticed. That night on the TV news, they showed wreckage on Interstate 70. Cars off the road, trucks jackknifed, turned over. It had been a record-breaking storm. By morning, it had passed. In the morning, I got up and had breakfast at the same restaurant, fueled up, checked the oil, tire pressure, then got back on the road. It was sunny. The road surface was wet but not frozen. It was above freezing outside. It would dry soon. I was somewhere in the middle of Kansas. I wondered if I would go past the wreckage of those accidents that had been on the news, or were they behind me? After a couple hundred miles, I do not recall seeing any wreckage. What I do recall is seeing flat land sweeping on forever in the distance. My goal for the day was to get to Colorado. I wanted to see Boulder. That is where those guys with the Volvo P1800s had been living. They were from other places in the Midwest, but they had all moved to Boulder because it was apparently the coolest place to be at that time. They had said that. I-70 goes to Denver. I would follow the signs to Boulder when I got there. Sometime around noon, I got off the highway and found a grocery store. I bought things to make sandwiches. They had Buckhorn beer. I bought a 6-pack because the name sounded so cornily Western. It turned out to be pretty good. I got back on the road and drove and drove and drove. Ate a sandwich while driving and drove and drove. I was getting into the western side of Kansas, past the towns of Hays, past Waukene, coming up on the town of Oakley. None of these towns had I heard of before. I looked forward to seeing the peaks of the Rocky Mountains in the distance. I wasn't sure if they'd be visible from as far away as Kansas, but the land seemed to afford a view of hundreds of miles. I kept scanning the horizon for the first sighting. It became afternoon. It was still light when I crossed into Colorado. I knew now that I would see them at any minute. I drove and drove. The sun began to set. It was a beautiful orange sunset. Still, no sign of peaks, no jagged skyline. Then it was night. I passed Flagler, Colorado. Just a few lights by the side of the road. Lyman, Deer Trail, Colorado. Now it was starting to sound like a mountain place, I thought. I knew I was getting close to Denver, as there came to be more cars on the road, more buildings, parking lots, houses. It must have been around 9 o'clock when I got into Denver proper. I followed the signs to Boulder. First, it was I-270, then Route 36 to Boulder. I stopped at a highway service area to get gas. I was starting to feel the stiffness in my body from spending all day virtually motionless in the car. I got out, stretched, and yawned. The night air stirred me out of my road trance. Pumping the gas, I looked out to the highway and felt so anonymous. All the cars going by, I'm sure that to them the presence of me standing here pumping gas never entered their minds. I locked my eyes onto one car from as far off as when it first came into view, and followed it with my eyes until its tail lights disappeared in the distance. Before I could see the occupants, I tried to guess if the driver was a man or a woman, young or old, a family with children, or a group of friends out driving. As the car passed, I saw that it was a man, alone. Where was he from? Where was he going? If another car pulled up to the pump behind me, would they notice my New Hampshire plates? I suppose they would. Would they mention it? That I was occupying my mind with these thoughts concerned me. Was it normal to care if anybody might notice you? I suspected that it wasn't. I capped the tank, went inside, got a coffee, and paid. In a few minutes, I was on the road again. Almost in Boulder. As I got close to the city, I could see the outline of mountains against the night sky. Then, further up ahead, I could see strange lights on the side of a mountain. What was it? It must be a ski area with lighting for night skiing, I figured. As I got closer, I could see that it was a big star. Someone had strung lights on the side of a mountain to make an enormous star. That seemed like a funny thing to me. Funny, but festive. And here's a picture of that. That's the, I don't know if you can see that. There's the star on the side of the mountain coming into Boulder. Okay. I drove until I found a motel. I parked and got out of the car, stretched and yawned. Pellets of de-icer crunched under my Converse All-Stars as I walked to the office. Inside, the lighting was dimmed, accentuating the drama of the artificial Christmas tree which stood beside an artificial fireplace which had a paper cutout of a fire inside. instead of a real fire. I got a room and thought maybe I would walk to a store to get some beer, and maybe look around. Maybe I would not drive the next day. I could keep the room for 2 nights and explore Boulder. Back at the room, I turned on the TV, brought the suitcase in from the car, and opened the road atlas. It showed Interstate 70 disappearing somewhere in Utah. I knew the weather could be dangerous there in the winter, so I planned that I would go south on I-25, eventually to Albuquerque, New Mexico. My brother Phil had given me the phone number of one of his friends from college who lived in Albuquerque. I forget the guy's name. I suppose there would be nothing wrong with giving him a call. He might be able to show me around some places in Albuquerque, but tomorrow I would see what there was to see in Boulder. That was my plan. I walked to the store and got beer, went back to the motel and took a shower, then sat on the bed and watched David Letterman. I was already in Colorado. I remember feeling that I had finally gotten into what was indisputably the West. This was the kind of place where Western movies would have been filmed, even if their stories were fiction. But then, what did that mean? It didn't mean anything. What did it matter that a place is regarded as the real West or not? It didn't matter after all. A more important consideration was, why had I chosen to drive across the country in November? It was sure to be cold the whole way. No good time for camping. It was just about the worst timing I could have chosen. The fact was, I knew that I had not given the season any thought at all in my planning. I had looked at the maps spread out on the floor of my room in the basement of my parents' house. I had looked at the maps while images of each state had come to mind. Always favorable images: amber waves of grain, purple mountains' majesty above the frozen highway, Pa Ingalls taking the team to Mankato to sell the butter that Ma had so lovingly churned. Truck stop in a snowstorm turkey dinner with all the fixins. Alan Ladd facing down the bad guy in the mud street with the Tetons in the background. Why had I cried like that in the bathroom at the truck stop? What had happened to Grandpa Phillips to make him repeat the advice, never live alone, never to live alone, never to live alone? My mother had always forbidden any of our family to own guns. My father once told me that when he was in the Navy, he'd be at sea for 6 months of each year. We called it the duty. Dad's got the duty, we'd all say. That's why he wasn't there. He told me once that early in their marriage, he had bought her a Beretta pistol for her to keep in the house for protection while he was gone, just in case. It had not gone well. My mother told him to get rid of the monstrous thing and never to ever bring guns into the house again. Grandpa Phillips had owned a shotgun. When I was a kid, when we would visit, all of us kids would ask to see the shotgun. It was very intriguing. There was a legend in our family that Grandpa Phillips had loved hunting with his friends and had made a point of always going to deer camp every fall in the woods of upstate New York somewhere. As they all grew up, got married, had families, the group of friends had always, without fail, gotten together for a week of hunting every November or December, whenever deer season had been in those days. The legend had it that Grandpa had continued that tradition over 50 years with that group of friends, and in all of those years had never once shot a deer. I had never questioned that story. My mother would tell it proudly. My understanding of it was that Grandpa was at heart an old softy who, when the time came, would not pull the trigger. could not, or did not anyway. I had seen old photos, yellowed with age, that showed men standing in the snow, shotguns cradled in their arms, posing among hanging carcasses of several deer at a camp a camp far away in the woods somewhere. Grandpa would point to his youthful image. I had always loved those stories. Grandpa had also loved fishing when he was younger. I suppose I inherited that from him. My mother had often told the story of the time he and his friends had gone fishing for a weekend. This particular time he had come back with several nice big fish. They were all cleaned and scaled. Somehow, Grandma Phillips had been able to tell that Grandpa had not caught these fish. These fish had been bought at a fish market. How she had known, I don't recall, but that was the story. My mother would tell that story with humor, that the lie was just the innocent effort of Grandpa to show some prowess as a fisherman. I never doubted it. Okay, that's the end of chapter 4. So I'm going to call it a day here, and see you soon.